Good afternoon, I'm Brent, Holland, and welcome to today's show, folks. This afternoon, space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the show Brent, Holland, to bring you the physics of Star Trek, to boldly go where no one has gone before. A little fun there, folks. Indeed, theoretical physicist Dr. Lawrence Krauss joins us this afternoon to talk about his book, The Physics of Star Trek. And amongst many things like dark matter, we will be discussing the possibilities of warp drive. Is it science fiction? Is it possible? Wait till you hear what Lawrence Krauss has to say.
When I wrote the book, the three most fantastic things in Star Trek are warp drive, time travel, and wormholes. And all you have to do is go up in the space shuttle and turn off the engines, and then just arrange for the space between you and the nearest star to catastrophically collapse in 1 second, and then the space between you and the Earth to catastrophically expand in 1 second, and then you'd find yourself a second later a few hundred miles away from the nearest star, and you'd sort of turn on your engines and go. And that sounds like it's kind of hokey, but in fact the laws of physics, as far as we know, allow it in principle to happen.
This afternoon, it's Scotty Give Me Warp Drive, Dr. Lawrence Krauss, and the Physics of Star Trek. Beam me up, Scotty. Right now on Brent, Holland. Folks, if you're just joining us, we are speaking with Lawrence M. Krauss. And Lawrence M. Krauss, of course, is a theoretical physicist. Just let me read you a little bit of his bio here. He's chair of the physics department at Case Western Reserve University. He's famed for the research community for his prescient suggestion that a still mysterious entity called dark energy, and we're going to be getting into that too, folks, might be the key to understanding the beginnings of the universe. He's got some great books out. One of his most notable, of course, is The Physics of Star Trek, which became a bestseller, and it's translated into 15 languages, including Klingon. And he's working on a new book. Oh, and I'm going to go for those puns all the way through it, Lawrence. Let's start off right away. Let's beam in right away. Star Trek, The Physics of Star Trek. What got you interested to become a Trekkie, and a Trekkie enough to do a book on physics of Star Trek?
Well, first, by the way, in self-interest, I should say that I haven't been at Case Western Reserve University for a couple of years. I moved to Arizona State University to direct an origins program having to do with the origins of the universe and the origins of life. And so it's a major program here that I'm quite proud of. So I'll advertise it at Arizona State. But now going to Star Trek, the point was that, originally it began as a joke, actually. Between me and my editor, her daughter was a Trekker, and we were talking about my next book, and I said, what about the physics of Star Trek? And we laughed, and then the more I thought about it, the more it grew on me, the idea. And I started to think, actually, on the train ride home. At the time I was teaching at Yale University, and I started to think about, transporter, actually, and all the different things you have to think about if you want to make a transporter, and how much fun I could have talking about it, and maybe connect Star Trek universe to the real universe. It was a very daunting task once I decided to do it. I was actually very scared. I first thought I was more worried about upsetting 20 million fans, and so it was a hard thing to write. And I finally came upon a formula, or whatever you want to call it, that worked in the end. It wasn't clear it would in the beginning, but and that was I feel very strongly if something's impossible, I'm not going to say it's possible. I try in talking to the public. I think it's really important that we don't mislead people. So I didn't want to write a book that said, this won't work, this won't work, this won't work. But Instead, I figured if something in Star Trek didn't work, I could relate it to something in the real universe that would work, and that was what I tried to do and have fun. And so really use it as a hook to seduce people into learning that the real universe is far more interesting than the universe of science fiction.
Okay, let's just go into a few examples of Star Trek, and then I definitely want to get to dark matter. The whole idea of beaming somebody from one area to another, beam me up, Scotty. Is that a possibility, do you think, one day? Breaking down?
Well, and unfortunately, as I say, although that's what got me into writing the book, that's the one thing that I think is not possible. And it's unfortunate, but we're going to be stuck on, and for guys like me who spend a lot of time on airplanes, it's even worse. The fundamental, besides all, there's a lot of practical problems we could spend a lot of time on. For instance, they like to say if you read the Star Trek technical manual, and some of your listeners may have it, they disassemble you, they turn you into a matter stream, and then move the atoms from one place to another, and then put them back together again. And if you turn the average human being into energy and release the energy equivalent of about 1,100 megaton nuclear weapons explosions, which is not environmentally friendly, but then okay, fine. I said, well, I wouldn't do it that way. I would actually take the information and take all the information that's stored in you as a human being and store that information, transport the information from one place to another, and then use some atoms I already have over here to recreate you. Well, that's not a transporter because you're still over there. But that's all right. I vaporize you, and now you're only over here. But even then, the problem is how do you transport that much information? There's a huge amount of information it would take. If you stack the hard drives that go from here to a third of the way to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, if you took 100 gigabyte hard drives, just to store that much information, it would take longer than the age of the universe to transport it. So that's a practical problem. But then there's a real fundamental physics problem, and that is that I really can't scan you at an atomic level and recreate you at an atomic level because of a fancy law of physics called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which says that I really can never know where every atom is in your body and exactly what it's doing at the same time. So I can know where the atoms are, but not quite what they're doing, or vice versa. So I could never make an exact copy of you. I could just make an approximation. And I don't know how many people would want to be approximated at the other end. And actually, the Star Trek writers knew that, so they created, if you watch the show, they created Heisenberg compensators. and Michael Okuda was asked, he's one of the art directors, how do they work? And he said, very well, thank you. That's the only answer that I think you'd come up realistically.
I think that was, and your answer was very astute as well, my friend. Folks, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Lawrence Krauss, and Lawrence Krauss, of course, is a theoretical physicist. We are going to be talking about dark matter. We're also talking about the physics of Star Trek, which is a very famous book he's written. If you want to get a copy of that book, very easy way to do it, as always, folks. Just go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, click on the book cover, it'll take you right to a place where you can get it. While we're on the subject of transportation, you were born in the States but grew up in Toronto, so in effect, I would say that you're a transported Canadian.
Yep.
You're now working at the University of Arizona. Just a couple more Star Trek questions, and we'll move on from that. Warp drive versus impulse drive. Is warp drive ever going to be a reality?
Well, practically, probably not. The amazing thing is when I wrote the book, the three most fantastic things in Star Trek, or fantastical is probably a better way of putting it, are warp drives, time travel, and wormholes. And what's amazing is that none of them are impossible in principle. That's kind of the thing that surprised me. Is that in principle the laws of general relativity allow for something you might call warp drive, because general relativity tells us that space is dynamical. It can expand and contract in the presence of mass and energy. It can respond dynamically. It can curve. And so if you wanted to go from here to the nearest star, which is 4 light years away, would take about 100,000 years by conventional rocket standards, and say you don't have 100,000 years to spare. All you have to do is go up in the space shuttle and turn off the engines, and then just arrange for the space between you and the nearest star to catastrophically collapse in 1 second, and then the space between you and the Earth to catastrophically expand in 1 second. And then you'd find yourself a second later, a few hundred miles away from the nearest star, and you'd sort of turn on your engines and go. And so, and that sounds like it's kind of hokey, but in fact, the laws of physics, as far as we know, allow it in principle to happen. And the question is, could you do it in practice? The answer is probably not, because in order to make space expand behind you, you'd have to fill it up with a very special kind of energy that has what's called negative energy, which sounds like something that was created by a physicist in a room without windows for too long. And that's probably true, but it actually exists on microscopic scales, given the laws of quantum mechanics. But what we don't know, and an open question at the forefront of physics, is could you create negative energy configurations that would do this? And that's an open question. We do know that even if you wanted to do it, would take more energy than there is in the entire galaxy to do it. But we don't know if it's practical. Oh well, I just missed the call. Doesn't matter.
It's Obama calling. He wants to get your latest opinion on the oil spill.
Yeah,
do,
probably the case.
Yeah.
What can you do? It happens all the time. He bothers me all the time whenever he needs it.
I know. It's a pain, though, isn't it? You know? Yeah, just you're busy, and there he is. You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com. Okay, let's get esoteric for a little bit. You know who Jane Goodall is.
Mm-hmm.
She's been on the show. Did you know she believes in Bigfoot?
Yeah, well, people, there's no accounting for taste.
I'm just going to ask you about the possibilities of some stuff. Dimensions, for example.
Yes.
Do you think
What about dimensions?
I grew up in the era of the Fifth Dimension, and they were a great rock band, a good pop band. But do you think there's more than 5 dimensions out there? Do you think they're provable? Do you think they actually exist, or do you think they just exist in between our ears?
Well, that's a good question. I wrote a whole book about it. In fact, exactly that question. The idea, the thought that there might be extra dimensions out in the universe has been around for a long time. It keeps cropping up in art and literature and in science, and it sort of fascinates people. And I think we're hardwired to want there to be more out there than meets the eye, whether it's Bigfoot or extra dimensions. And we want there to be a better place, a different place. And so the question is, just because we're hardwired to want it doesn't mean it's there. And well, in physics now, there are reasons to think there might be extra dimensions. The notion has cropped up and gotten a lot of currency in the last 20 years in physics, but we have no evidence that there's anything beyond the 4 dimensions. We know the 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, and it's a fascinating possibility. But at this point, there's not a shred of evidence that such things exist. And what's more, what's surprising, we used to think if there were extra dimensions, the question, of course, is if there are extra dimensions, where are they? How come you can't walk into them? And the one argument that was given for a long time is that they're hidden, that they're so small that you can't see them. It's like having a little circle above every point in space. It's so small you can't even see it with a microscope. And that's one possibility, and in fact, that if they existed, that's probably the most likely possibility. What's been surprising is that it's been realized that in fact, if it's possible to have very large extra dimensions, as long as gravity is the only thing that operates in them, then they could remain invisible, and above every point in space there could be huge extra dimension with extra galaxies and everything else right next door to you, and you wouldn't know. But and it's a fascinating possibility, and that's what's attracted physicists. But it just hasn't led to any interesting results that tell us that those things definitely exist. And so it's an open question, and we just don't know if the fascination with them is truly simply because we're fascinated as human beings, or whether they really are there.
Interesting. Do you put that in the same realm as people searching for God?
No, I think there's a difference. The difference is that people who are talking about the extra dimensions are looking for falsifiable tests that there might be extra dimensions, evidence in an accelerator that something is leaking into another dimension and disappears. So those people are trying to do science, and they're trying to make a proposal with a testable prediction that actually resolves a physical problem. And searching for God is none of that. It not testable, doesn't solve any problems, and you can't. It's not an idea you can particularly disprove, nor is it an idea that allows you to explain anything.
I can ask you another esoterical question. If you were God, would this be a universe that you would make?
Well, no.
Now you're only allowed to be God once, according to your wife. That's it. You're only allowed one great deal, and that's it.
I think 0 is more like it then. But
I hear you, buddy. I hear you.
But I think that the point is our universe is very strange. It seems to have lots of properties that are very inexplicable. And in terms of the long-term future of life, it's not a particularly good universe. Even the existence of the universe is very strange. You know, we live in a universe of matter, and a much prettier universe would have equal amounts of matter and antimatter, but such a universe wouldn't have life in it. It would be beautiful, but it would be empty, because the matter and antimatter would annihilate the pure radiation. And so what is strange is why the universe is the peculiarities of our universe, and some people say it looks like our universe is fine-tuned so life can exist in it, and I think that leads to a lot of misconceptions about it. May be true that our universe, there may be an infinite number of universes, and they may all be different, and the only ones we could exist in are the ones like ours. And so you might say, wow, it's fine-tuned for us to exist, but it's more like kind of cosmic natural selection. Like, why can a bee see the colors of the flowers that it can see? Well, if it couldn't reproduce, it couldn't live. And so maybe it's not too surprising that we live in a universe in which we can live.
Okay, fair enough. And
I mean, it may not be a very profound fact. It may be that if that's the case, then unfortunately, it may be that the fundamental laws of physics are not indeed fundamental. They're just environmental accidents. That the fundamental constants of nature, which we'd like to explain, and why there are three families of elementary particles, and all of that, may just be an accident of our environment. In different universes, it may be different, but we might not be able to survive in those universes.
Would you make us, or would we be part of that kind of accident as well?
Well, I don't think. I think the point is that we are kind of an accident. I mean, every evidence that you have water, organic materials, and sunlight, and organic life seems to evolve. It evolved on Earth about as early as it could have, given the laws of physics. And if you and apparently, if you wait long enough without major meteorite impacts, then it's possible that conscious life can arise. And so. I don't like the idea of making things. I think that would I make a universe in which it's possible that life could exist? Well, that's an interesting universe for sure. But I don't know all the possible universes. There may be far more interesting universes in which life couldn't exist. So it's hard for me to say, not being divine, or not knowing all the laws of physics.
There you go, folks. We're having a fascinating conversation today with Lawrence M. Krauss. And Lawrence M. Krauss, of course, is a theoretical physicist. He's written all kinds of great books. Just trying to think of some now. The Physics of Star Trek. Go ahead, name.
The last one about extra dimensions was called Hiding in the Mirror.
And we're going to get into your new book as well in a few minutes.
Okay.
Because I'm excited about that one also. We're talking about possibilities within the physical realm. And I have to disagree with you on that last one, because according to my mother, indeed, I was planned. So there you go.
Well, good.
I wasn't an accident.
Well, there you go. That's true. You weren't an accident. I guess you're planned, but were you designed? I'm not so sure.
Who knows? You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com. Let's talk some more about things like that. Let's talk about dark matter. What fills up dark matter? Is this, the universe has to be in balance. Otherwise, we'd just implode or explode, I suspect.
Well, it doesn't have to be anything. It could collapse. It could expand forever. What's amazing is that there happens to be just the right amount of matter and energy to make the universe flat in a general relativistic sense, so that there's just enough matter so that space on the average doesn't curve, which is kind of an amazing coincidence that we don't understand, really, although we have a mechanism that could produce it in the early universe called inflation. But it turns out the amount of visible matter, it sounds like economics, but it actually is. It's not so voodoo. It really is a theory. It's inflationary theory in the early universe. But what's amazing is that visible matter, everything we can see, stars, galaxy, people, aliens, all of that, account for less than 1% of the total amount of stuff that would be needed to make the universe flat. So 99%, if the universe is flat, which we can measure, and it appears to be flat, 99% of the mass and energy is invisible. It's not made of normal matter. And we used to think, and we discovered, of course, that by looking at the motion of objects in galaxies, that there was more mass than could be accounted for by the stuff that shined, the stars and gas and all that. And we call that stuff, with our incredible linguistic perspicacity, dark matter, and because it doesn't shine. And the point is, what we discovered is that most of the massive galaxies are invisible, and we don't know what that material is. We call it dark matter. It turns out there are good candidates for it, new particles, elementary particles that in fact don't interact with light, and so they're really, from a particle physics perspective, there's lots of possible candidates. And what's really interesting is if it's really out there, if the dark matter is made of this stuff, we can actually detect it on Earth. In fact, up in Sudbury, in what was the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, we're putting dark matter detectors to look for this stuff. Because if it really is elementary particles, it's not just out there. It's going through the room where I am and the room where you are right now. We're going right through our bodies, and so we can try and detect that stuff. And so that'll be very exciting if we do. It'll be a discovery of the dominant material in the universe, and we'll discover most of the universe is made of something else, which we are pretty certain it is. But it's even weirder because that dark matter now we know accounts only for another 30% of all the material that there is. 70% of the energy of the universe resides in empty space. That's called dark energy, and we don't have the slightest idea why that's there. And so the bottom line is that we're a little bit of cosmic pollution. We're 1% of a universe full of dark matter and dark energy. And if you got rid of us and all the galaxies and everything else, then the universe would be largely the same.
Why are we here?
I have no idea why we're here. It's just I'm enjoying it while I am.
Good for you. Good answer.
You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com.
I've only got a few more questions for you. The next question is one that has plagued mankind since the beginning of time. Can you explain women for us?
You have to get another guest for that. I just do physics. It's much easier.
What drives you, Lawrence, to know?
I think it's so amazing. The universe is such an amazing place that how could you not? The mysteries we all ask from the time we're kids. How do we get here? What's the universe made of? What's happening? How will it end? And I'm fortunate enough to be paid to think about those things. It's a wonderful adventure, a wonderful mystery. And for me, I can't. How can you not want to know these things? Is more of a question to me than. And so it's a privilege to be able to think about these things, and just the search is in fact far more interesting than sometimes the finding.
Let's talk about Quantum Man, Richard Feynman's life and science.
Yeah, my new book's coming out early next year. It's my first biography, actually. It's a scientific biography of Richard Feynman, who's probably one of the most beloved and famous physicists in the second half of the 20th century, and there's he's famous among the public because all these books, he was quite a character, and there's all these books of anecdotes about him, and he was in the Challenger disaster commission, but it turns out he was one of the greatest physicists of the last century, and I decided to write a book that would explain what his scientific legacy and intertwine it with his life, and so people could not only learn about his life, but why scientists revere him, and in the process use what he talk about. He revolutionized our understanding of quantum mechanics, and therefore I want to use that as a hook to understand 20th and 21st century physics, which I tried to explain through the eyes of learning what he discovered.
When that book's released, I'd like to invite you back to discuss it in more detail as well.
It'd be great. Maybe we'll have more time. I really do have to go right now, unfortunately.
Last question, a question I ask virtually every guest that comes on the show. You're virtually speaking to every university student in Canada right now, as well as international students. What would you say to them? Do what interests you. This is the one time in your life when you can do exactly what you want to do. Be driven by what interests you, because first of all, that'll make your life richer. You'll do a better job at it, and you'll be a better citizen. And so I think that too many people worry about jobs and other things, and bottom line is that the world's an exciting place, and find what excites you. Perfect. I want to thank you so much for coming on this afternoon, Lawrence, and taking the time out of your busy schedule. Thanks a lot. You take care. Take care, and I'll be in touch about that the book. Sure, and I'm sorry I have to rush off, but that's fine. We got started late. Okay. That's okay. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye now. Bye. You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads,
please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website, www.brenthollandshow.com. I sincerely want to thank Dr. Lawrence Krauss for coming on the show and giving us insight to the possibilities of really going out there and realizing all our potential and ideas that we carry in between our two ears. As always, go to the www.brenthollandshow.com. Incidentally, there's a wealth of information there. There's all kinds of shows for you to download. If you're doing research, folks, and students, this is a great archive of living history online for you to download for your research and quote them directly. Ted Sorensen's there, Minnie Jean Brown, etc., etc. www.brenthollandshow.com. These were the folks that went through some of the most historically relevant challenges in our lifetime, and their stories are there in their own words right online for you. I'm Brent Holland. I want to thank you all for listening, and our guest, Dr. Lawrence Krauss. See you next time.
Thank you.